CBOC members, district members, welcome to the April 21st meeting of the Dixon Citizens Bond Oversight Committee. Thank you for your flexibility. This is obviously the makeup meeting for March. So let's open our meeting with the pledge to our flag. Please join me. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America
and to the republic
for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with justice and liberty for all. Thank you. So moving on to roll call. So I am here. Georgette Portier, I think that is her.
That is me, sorry.
Perfect. Andrea Kett.
Here.
Julie Mustard, not yet. Gary Riddle.
here.
And Robert Sanchez emailed me saying he will not be available. So first thing is the adoption of the agenda for tonight. So I will entertain a motion to approve the agenda.
This is Andrea. I'll move to approve the agenda.
Could I have a second, please?
I'll second.
Okay, all in favor of the agenda, say aye.
Hi.
Okay, opposed? Very good. Any public comment on the agenda? Seeing none, moving on to the minutes. So in your package of materials, we have the approved minutes from the November meeting. The draft of the minutes from the January meeting was sent out as an email to committee members, and I don't see that that got attached to our documents for tonight. Is that the case?
I'm not seeing it, Tad. I think I think we missed that. Sorry.
Yeah.
Yep.
So I'll let Rose know. So we'll revisit that at our next meeting.
Yes.
Sorry about that. For the consent agenda, we don't have anything. So at this time, I'm pleased to open up the floor to public comment for non-scheduled agenda items. Okay, seeing none, we will move on to the agenda. And the first thing is the update from the chair. As I mentioned, thank you for your flexibility in attending this meeting, both to members of the public, school district, and committee members. So at this point, we're coming up on to 4 years of the Dixon Citizens Bond Oversight Committee to oversee the expenditure of Measure Q money. Hard to believe that 4 years has gone by, but in that period of time, we now have a open John Knight Middle School. So in a way, the goals of this committee for the first part of the Measure Q project is almost complete. So I'm really happy about that. My kid is in 8th grade and he is finally in John Knight Middle School. From a personal perspective, that was something really important to me. Moving forward, in June, all of our committee members, their 2-year term of appointment is up. So I will have to canvass the committee members and see who wishes to continue serving for another 2 years. In my case, I've served as chair for 3 years come June. So my term as chair will be over. I'm basically termed out. So we're going to have to find a new chair to serve this committee. As a personal note, I'm in a little bit of a pickle as far as my decision on participating in this committee. The place where I work is now up for being divested from its parent company. So I don't know what that means for my job or even the functioning of what my employer has done all these years. So I think we'll get news on that shortly. Keep my fingers crossed on that. We're still one short on this committee. We still need another person. And I know that's hard to do, but if you're aware of anyone that would be interested in serving, I think in a way, a lot of the hard work is already over. We have a good functioning committee, and we'll be working on the elementary schools probably up till 2027. So this committee will go on, but we probably will have a high turnover of folks now that this first part is complete. Also, I think towards the end of the meeting, we will revisit what our schedule is, because I'm hoping that a lot of the work that Miku has done on the John Knight Middle School, that's coming to an end. So we will certainly be in a new place, and the bond committee will be looking more at the elementary schools. So thank you, and I'll turn it over to Superintendent Dolan.
Thank you, Tad. I want to touch on the membership thing a little bit as well. But first, I want to, Tad and I were chatting there, and I asked Julie a little bit about it. But as Tad said, his 8th grader, Preston, is now in attendance at the John Knight Middle School. And we've, had a few little bugs and bumps over there. Nothing really impeding the work that staff and students are doing. And it is just so terrific to be in that building. We've had all sorts of different people go through there now. All the staff now back in person, obviously. We're at about 60% of the kids attending in person. Half of them on Monday, Tuesday, the other half on Thursday, Friday. We've had parents some parents at least have had the chance to get through there. And back, gosh, it's about a month ago or so now, I think, we had John Knight and his 2 daughters and some of our retired employees who worked with John. We did a small ribbon cutting out on the front steps on a Saturday morning, Saturday afternoon, whatever it was, just to make sure that before we got kids in there that we did recognize John and kind of formally put his name on the place. So it's fun not to call that facility the old high school anymore. I haven't heard that one, and it was that name for way too long. And it's also been way too long to call Dixon High School the new high school when you're at 13, 14 years in a facility. It's not new anymore. So we are very excited to have kids there, and thank you to this group for all of your work in helping to oversee the project and your input along the way as well. So Tad, as I said, touched on the issue around membership that I wanted to highlight as well. And Robert obviously not here tonight, but the group of you who have been here from the get-go, devoted public servants, I think is probably an appropriate term, not misusing it. It's been, it's just been the 5 of you here for so long. And that's great on one hand, and that's really unfortunate on another, because we've had vacancies, the current one that exists, but we had a previous individual who left, and that took a while to fill, and we've had this one standing vacancy forever. And so when you look at the required representation, we really right now are not meeting a member of a senior citizen group, although there's perhaps eligibility there. And this might be a simple, and maybe it doesn't matter, but Andrea owns a business in town. We don't have a representative of the business community. If we wanted to reassign her label from at large to that would check that box. So the question of what do you want to do, I think is a big one. And when we talk about schedule at the end, Lee and I have met a couple times in the last week. And we're actually going to ask if we can keep the regularly scheduled May meeting to clean up a few things, including the community report, but also to address the membership question. So that would be May 19th. I think is that, and happily, at which point in time, we should be able to hold our meeting in the city council chambers, which are becoming available in the first week of May. So it would be nice if we actually got to get off these darn cameras and hold a meeting in person, of course, with all the precautions. So, it feels to me like the membership status question is a big issue. I would not blame a single one of you or all of you for that matter for deciding, I feel like I've done my time. I'm going to step aside. I think you've all earned, well, you don't have to earn that right. You have that right at any point in time, but with your service, it is certainly well established that you have made your contribution and should be free to go if you want. So, yeah, our level of activity is going to decrease here when we get the kitchen component of the project done in June, early July, whenever that exactly gets finished. We'll be working on planning for Anderson and such, but the fact is we'll still be spending money, and this committee still needs to exist and complete its role. So if that is agreeable, Tad, we'll meet on the 19th as planned and spend some time talking about this, and as well as getting the chance to look at the report. So. And just one last thing, Michael Cannon is on our screen. Mike is a member of the School Site Solutions Incorporated team. We had Jim Bombachi, who was our project manager, and Jim has relocated to another state, not driven out by the John Knight Middle School renovation project or anything like that. It was a long planned move. So Mike is our go-to guy here on the daily operations around the site, as well as active in other things like the beginning steps here on Anderson and a non-Q project, Our School Farm. So welcome, Mike, and we'll hear a little bit from him later on. So that's it for me, Tad. Thank you.
Thank you. So at this time, I'll take public comment on either of the updates. Okay, seeing none, we will move on to our first action item, which is look at the school. Let me get the document. This is a request for additional money for school specialty. So with that, I will ask for Lee Coop to review this document, please.
Thank you, Tad. Good evening, members of the Citizens Bond Oversight Committee for Dixon Unified School District and Superintendent Dolan and Mike, hi, and members of the public. My name is Lee Coop, School Site Solutions, Inc., as was said before. This item is a resolution that went to the board for approval and in fact was approved on April 15th. School Specialty is one of our vendors for furniture and equipment. And we had an overall budget. There's a typo in here, my bad, on your cover page. The overall budget for furniture and equipment is $700,000, not $750,000. So we basically divided that $700,000 roughly between two vendors with some other small purchases as well. I have provided a memo for you which outlines what has been spent for each of the vendors and where we are right now and why this board resolution was requested. We use School Specialty for the largest portion of our furniture and equipment. And thus far, we've spent about $638,000 or so with them. Campbell Keller did the library. And if you've been to the library, it's just a fantastic room. The furniture is amazing, as is all the furniture there, the new furniture. But we had $150,000 slated for them, board authorization, and we were well under that at about $105,000. So staying within the $700,000 budget, we just want to increase school specialty to spend a little more there, knowing that we are done with Campbell Keller. So we wanted to add 30,000 of board authorization so that we could spend a little more with school specialty. So far, we have placed 2 orders with them. The second order is due to come May 5th, I believe it is, May 5th, which is a Wednesday. And we'll be delivering a bunch of new storage cabinets for the classrooms and some other items. We purposely did this in phases, in different orders, because as the school folks get settled into the school, then we find out more of really what they need, rather than just trying to project everything in advance. So we've learned a lot about their storage needs. They did purge a lot of their old stuff in the move, but still we have some additional storage needs. So a largest part of this second order is storage cabinets for the classrooms. We have another order that we wish to put in, order number 3, and that will be our last order, last big order, I'd say. There might be some odds and ends. So because of that, we want to make sure that we have enough money in there for school specialty while staying within the overall budget. So we asked the board for authorization for another 30,000, which makes their authorization from 550,000 to 580,000. The board, in fact, did adopt that resolution. And now this resolution is coming to you for information, looking at it, and also for action as a valid Measure Q expenditure. And I would take any questions.
Okay, good. When I first read this, I saw storage units. I was thinking of those old modular units and going, oh, I hope that's not what that
No.
is. So appreciate your explanation. Then for the order number 3, it looks like that's for outside stuff to make lunchtime a little more palatable for the students. What happens to that material, during the summer? Is that then stored somewhere? How's that work?
The outdoor lunch tables, we ordered 10 prior, and they are sitting there right now, but we need more because mostly the kids do like to come outside and eat lunch instead of eating lunch inside. And they are durable tables that can exist in the weather. The weather's not the issue. The only issue would be any potential vandalism. They're pretty heavy. I don't expect any theft, but that would, somebody would really have to plan that. So they basically stay out. I mean, we haven't had a summer for John Knight Middle School yet where it's unoccupied. So I think the school will figure out what they want to do. They may want to bring them indoors just for safekeeping, but we're not quite there. So on order number 3, Tad, it's to add some additional lunch tables. And also you notice, I think I put umbrella. There's shade umbrellas that are needed for those tables as well, for all of them.
Okay. Generally speaking, is furniture for a school more expensive than what you would get, if you had something comparable for your own personal home?
It's more durable, usually made of heavier gauge metal, heavier gauge steel, heavier wood. Everything's more durable, and also has to go to safety and any ADA or ergonomic standards. So my answer would be yes, generally.
Thank you. Any committee member questions? Any comments from the public? Okay, seeing none, then I will ask for a motion to approve this school specialty increase as a valid Measure Q expenditure.
I move to accept it as a valid Measure Q expenditure.
Yeah, that'd be the first. Need a second?
I'll second.
Thank you. All in favor of approving this as a valid Measure Q expenditure?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Very good. So we can move on to the next item, which is the U.S. Utter Inspection Service contract increase.
Right, thank you very much. Again, Lee Coop with School Site Solutions. Mike Cannon is also here to answer any questions as well. This is for Yuba Sutter Inspection Services. We have been using them successfully for Project Inspector, which is a required role when you have a state-funded or any kind of actually public school construction project. Because of the time extension on this project and increased scope, there's two increases on this one. One is for the major renovation project, and we're wanting to increase that in the amount of, it's a not to exceed amount of $15,000. That would bring it to $161,575. And the window kitchen project, the original contract was approved for $23,650. And this increase would increase it to $58,270 with the increase of $34,620. We asked Bob Boyer at Yuba Sutter to project out for when we would finish this project, so we don't have any more of these extensions, because you've seen a number of these, and we believe this will cover it. Never guaranteed, but that's what we asked for, and we're hoping that is the case. So we would ask for an approval on this as a valid Measure Q expenditure. This was approved at the board as well.
I have a question. Can you talk a little bit about this pretty big extension, percentage-wise, what it's actually scope of work, length of time? What is the reason for this large of an extension?
So Mike could also chime in on this one, but Bob spends a specific number of hours basically every month on these two projects. He also has a large number of forms to fill out every month for the state. And so this is in keeping with the contract that we have with Bob. And Mike, maybe you could talk about what specifically Bob does.
Okay. Thank you, Lee. Mike Cannon from Cannon Robertson Associates. I'm working under contract with School Site Solutions. I'll point out a couple of things, and you may have noted this when we get to the change orders. There are a number of change orders, particularly in the kitchen, dealing with framing and with other structural issues, which came about when we opened up the walls back in January and February and ongoing in order to put in the new equipment and also to rebuild the existing boiler plant at the kitchen. All of those required special inspection by Bob. That ate up a lot of his hours. So
special what? I didn't catch that.
I'm sorry, special inspection. Okay.
Okay.
Okay. If you assume that all of the framing meets current structural codes, that's one thing. But as we all know, that is an old building. And particularly if you're putting newer equipment in, it does not necessarily meet the new structural framing codes. He had to go through it and re-inspect basically all of the structural framing in the kitchen in order to bring that up to current code. That's what ate a lot of his time over in the kitchen, which is why if you look at the bump from what his original contract was to now, that ate a great deal of it. In addition to which, as Lee's already noted, there's been a time extension on this one out to early June to make sure everything gets taken care of. That also had something to do with his extensions on time. I've worked with him to sit down and project what he believes now that we have all the walls opened and everything we think is known, how much inspection time we have remaining for both of those projects through the middle of June. Okay, so that's where we came up, or that's where he came up with those particular numbers. Does that make any sense?
Yeah, so basically to answer Gary's question, it was just there was a tremendous amount of unknowns in that first estimate of $23,650 just wasn't good once you got into the project.
Yes, that's a polite way of putting it. And we can talk more about that when we get to change orders.
Okay.
There's been a lot of unknowns on this project.
Old buildings, yep.
Well, If I can make a comment to that, unfortunately, I have some experience redoing old buildings. I work for this California State University system, and my assignment there was taking closed state mental hospitals and developmental centers and turning them into new CSU campuses. So I have some experience going through closed facilities and trying to figure out how to repurpose them and how to restore them. I also, when I was over as the assistant superintendent for facilities at Thomas Unified, I had to rebuild an elementary school under much the same circumstances. And I have to tell you that you will always find things that you didn't necessarily expect. You can go through and you can try to anticipate everything you can, which I think we're going to be doing at Anderson, but you can never guess everything. So.
Any other committee member questions? Any questions from the public? Okay, seeing none, I will ask for a motion to approve the Yuba Sutter Inspection Services contract increase as a valid Measure Q expenditure.
It's Andrea. I move to approve.
Thank you. Could I have a second?
I'll second it.
Thank you, Georgette. All in favor? Say
Aye.
Opposed? Very good. So we can move on to the third item, Valley Relocation Moving Service increase. Lee?
Thank you. Again, you can tell there's been a lot of activity at JKMS, and all of these contract amendments are the upshot of that. So like Tad said in his report, a very, very busy time over the holiday and in January, and getting furniture and moving in. And so all of this paperwork reflects that. Valley Relocation, as you recall, we used for moving services from CA Jacobs over to JKMS. They have performed very, very well for us. This is a ratification. The board ratified this increase. It was to cover some additional pickup of boxes and the final packing box reconciliation. So the original contract, or what has been approved already by you folks and the board, was $14,080. And this is an increase of $3,891 to cover those additional pickups and the extra packing boxes. Happy to report that many of the packing boxes, a very high percentage, went back to the company. I want to venture to say something like 80–85%, which is really good. And so that means we rented the boxes rather than paid for the boxes. So that's kudos to the staff, kudos to the principal for, sort of rounding everything up, and kudos to the custodians for doing a great job of everything, but in particular on this item, packing up those boxes, folding them up, having them stacked up and very neatly ready for for Valley Relocation to come get them. So the staff made this a really, really successful moving project, I have to say. And so this would be, like I said, the board did ratify this, and this is for your approval as a valid Measure Q expenditure. I'd take questions.
Okay, I guess the first question is, it looks like on the summary here, 50% of the boxes weren't returned and we had to pay for them. So is that now going to be updated and we didn't have to spend so much on those boxes?
Yeah, that was this was a cost estimate. Yep. For the increase. So that was a very, very conservative number. So we made sure that we covered everything. In the end, the final cost for this, as we get that final invoice for Valley Relocation, I'm not sure if it's actually in this report this month, would come out lower than that because we were able to return a lot more. Yes.
85% recovery rate seems a lot better than 50.
Oh yeah, 50%. That was, like I said, very conservative, just to make
Yeah.
sure we were covered.
Thank you.
I did notice a typo also on this one. It's $3,891. There's in the cover page, it says 3,000 down in the middle of the page. So that's incorrect. The approval by the board was the correct amount, the $3,891.
I'm just curious, how come you guys didn't get the cost estimate prior to the extra move? 'Cause, I mean, I'm assuming you guys already knew there would be. I'm just curious why it came after.
Yeah, we did get the cost estimate prior. It's just coming along, the paperwork is coming along afterwards. So yes, I always worked with Valley Relocation to get an estimate, but also we knew in their original contract, they do box by box, delivery by delivery, pickup, every delivery, what that would cost. So basically we knew what that would cost. And so as we knew that there were going to be some an extra pickup, and then this final box reconciliation, you can't do that till later, but the paperwork basically followed.
Any other committee member questions? Okay, any questions from the public? Okay, I will accept a motion to approve Valley Relocation Moving Service increase as a valid Measure Q expenditure.
I move to approve it.
Can I get a second?
Julie, I'll second.
Thank you. All in favor of approving the Valley relocation as a valid Measure Q expenditure, indicate aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? Thank you. Now we can move on to the GLUMAC increase. Lee?
Thank you. Mike may talk about this as well. GLUMAC is the company that we are contracted with to do the commissioning on various systems, including HVAC, electrical, lighting. And the original contract was at $33,100. And again, the window kitchen project has caused an increase that is necessary. In addition, there were some other package units, HVAC units, rooftop units that apparently were not included in the original. And so they are included in this as well. So again, adding a new project onto this is basically the reason why this is happening. I don't know, Mike, if you want to add anything more to how GLUMAC is doing, or if you know anything about that.
I think you've covered it, Lee. Basically, we're having GLUMAC come through in the kitchen project and test all of the systems. And I'm not sure why a couple of the HVAC units in the renovation were left out, but it may have been that they were in one of the units that had been in some degree of use over time. But we decided it would be better just to test and commission everything on the site to make sure they all work to the same standards. So.
Okay, I don't have any questions on this. Committee members? Okay, any questions from members of the public? Okay, I will entertain a motion to approve the GLUMAC increase as a valid Measure Q expenditure.
I move to approve it.
Could I have a second, please?
I'll second. It's Andrea.
Thank you. So all in favor of approving the GLUMAC increase as a valid Measure Q expenditure indicate saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? Very good. We'll move on to item E. This now gets into the big change order, the John Knight Middle School renovation project change order number 9.
Thank you, Tad. I guess I'll just start this out and then I think I'm going to have Mike take it. Brian, I don't know if you want to talk about this as well. Mike and Brian attend and represent the school district at the weekly construction meetings, so they're much more on top of it than I am. But basically, I would say the big thing for me is actually this is a smaller change order than what you've seen before. So I'm happy about that. Also there is you notice there's a time extension to July 9th. And Mike can talk about that, and that was a no cost time extension. So I'll leave it to either of my colleagues here, or my boss and my colleague. Mike, if you want to take it.
Well, I think what I'll do is simply point out that, as Lee's already mentioned, that we do have a no-cost time extension on the renovation to the 9th of July. We do not expect to use all of that time. I'll tell you that we expect to be done and out by July 2nd, including all of the paperwork, which usually takes a couple of weeks after the actual work is finished in any case. But we expect to be done.
Michael, real quick, can you explain a little bit about the time extension, how that relates to all these change orders? Because I missed that.
Okay. Basically, what we've done is because we've increased the amount of work, and in particular, one of the change orders back on the first page, when you notice, there is a rather large one for changing out all of the lighting. That's not going to be done until the end, probably the end of May, first or second week of June. Okay, so that's pushing the schedule quite a bit. And I'll just comment on that right now. The reason that we put that in is we found that when we started going through the building, you have in the classrooms and the hallways and the public areas at least 5 different kinds of lighting, some of which are 25 or 30 years old, and you cannot buy any of the parts or the bulbs or any of the other pieces for it anymore, including going online and trying to buy bad Chinese imitations, because I will tell you, I tried that as well. So what we finally decided to do was simply to take all of them down and go to the district standard for lighting for the district, so that you now have lighting that's going in that matches lighting in all of the other buildings in the district, that the maintenance department can buy pieces and parts for, or can replace whole without having to run around looking for parts. Okay. The reason this is taking a while is that the orders for all the parts are coming in basically now, given the supply chain issues that's been going on over the last year or so. The factories are making things as the orders come in, so they're not warehoused anymore. So we send an order to the manufacturer and they make them for us. So what they're doing is they're making them as we order them. So we have 2 of the 3 orders in. I believe we're due to get the last one sometime in the next week to 10 days, after which the electrician will start installation of all of those. I'm trying to remember now, and Brian, you may help me on this. I believe we have buildings A and B done, and I think we have Jim done. We're still working on building C, if I'm not mistaken.
Yep.
In any case.
So are these LED updates?
Pardon? Yes.
Yeah, they are. And I'll just add a little bit to what Mike said. So we were attempting to use the old stuff to save costs. Turns out the old stuff was too unusable.
Yes.
Is really what that boils down to.
Yeah. And I think you'll find on some of the other things, it's very much the same thing. Some of the mechanical systems are exactly the same way. The idea was reuse what's existing, but when you actually start getting into the system, they're really not reusable.
I have a quick question. So do those come with a warranty then also? But
The newer ones?
yes.
Yes,
Okay.
they do.
So you're buying the lights, but you're also buying lots of years of
Yeah.
Yes.
protection.
Yes, you are.
Okay.
I think I have a question for Superintendent Dolan. I recall
Sure.
at the beginning of during design for the VMS or the KMS now, there were some energy grants and part of it was also lighting replacement. What did that specifically cover then?
Yeah, so that was just for information for everybody. So that was through the Prop 39 program. And with that, at JK, the work that we did were the HVAC units. And the lighting that we did was over at Dixon High School. So we didn't actually do any of the lighting work at the middle school project. That happened exclusively at Dixon High.
Okay, so it was primarily the HVAC portion only at the Dixon.
At middle school. Yep. Yep.
All right, and then
Does, I'm sorry, go ahead, Georgette.
so Mike, the next question that I have is what triggers Title 24 when we're doing remodels, you know, where we should have known to replace lighting and all that. Do you know?
I'm sorry, you faded there a little bit. Could you repeat that, please?
Yeah, the question that I have is what triggers Title 24 where lighting needs to be replaced for this remodel?
Okay. Normally what happens is when you have measurable lumens within, I believe it's either 5 or 6 feet of the floor in a classroom and some other measurable items. What we found was that when you actually tried to light up a classroom or a hallway particularly, I have one hallway in particular in mind, you would find that half of the fixtures would either not go on at all or would come on and would flicker, but you would simply not have sufficient lighting. And even if you assumed, as in building A at the middle school, that you had sufficient natural light, you can't calculate that entirely as part of the Title 24 requirements. So we took a look at that, and we actually, I believe, we had the contractor price out partial replacement, and the labor cost of going through and replacing parts of things and then just having a mishmash of stuff was not as practical as just going through and replacing everything in a classroom. It's much faster to actually to take everything out and replace everything rather than going through and trying to go this one, but not these three, and so forth. So, okay.
Yeah. One comment. I think the district will save a lot of money on electrical costs over the long term and will probably pay for a lot of this expenditure. We did that at my job site and the savings were phenomenal. The other question is, are there any rebates or anything you can get from PG&E to help offset the initial cost of this?
That's a good question. And that one I may boot back to Lee.
I don't believe that there are any PG&E rebates available at this time,
Okay.
Tad. The Prop 39 energy efficiency program that Brian alluded to earlier, what is now about
Takes everything up. Yes.
7 or 8 years old. And at the time that there were rebates galore, there were all kinds of things available. And you always have to keep tabs on it because sometimes these rebates come up. And we count on the architects to let us know and monitor that. And at this point in time, there aren't any rebates available that I know of. We'll always check on that with every project that we do and see what's available.
Okay. I mean, the only thing I would say, it might be good to just do the very quick back of the envelope calculation on what the payback might be for some of this LED change out.
Okay.
Tad, I wish if it was a back of the envelope calculation, that would be really cool. I would love that. Unfortunately, you actually have to pay experts to do that. And I don't think we want to do that. I think suffice it to say that, yes, you are absolutely correct because these are up to standard new lighting. They'll be much more energy efficient than what was there previously. And then again, not a nightmare headache for the maintenance department for maintenance, repair, and replacement. We'll take a look again on any new project On any other project that we do take a look at that payback when we can, and do that. It's more complicated than we wish it was, actually. So yeah.
So Michael, Lee, if you all would hit some of the other highlights on this change order, I'd appreciate it.
I can do that real quick, even.
And Mike, there you go. Unmute.
So, you know, what I typically do with the board when we present these is just touch briefly on some of the larger ticket items, right? So 221.1, just referring to the number, PCO number 221.1, it's the second on the top. Some additional fencing at the northwest sector of the campus, adjacent to the small gym and music. We redid our fencing there because the existing fencing allowed access to the roof of the music building quite easily. You got on top of the fence, you got on top of the building. So we reconfigured the fencing there to both allow an internal path of travel to the west side of the building and get the fence away from the building. Mike already talked about 229, which was the lighting retrofit. 232, we limited our scope with landscaping in the initial bid. So we have added a variety of things. This $45,000, almost $46,000 was just to get down weed barrier and bark everywhere where we hadn't already planned it. So that was across many portions of the campus. 233, if you've been able to visit campus on the east side of campus.
Superintendent?
Yes.
Just back up. When we did our tour and went into the courtyard area, you had all this, almost looked like crushed gravel that you indicated was going to be permanent. Was that removed and we replaced it with park?
No, that's decomposed granite, and that is there intentionally. It's a poor man's alternative to concrete. So rather than pave all those areas, we went with the decomposed granite where we could to provide a firm surface and that you can even stand on in wet weather. It doesn't get muddy. So no, these were areas, landscaping areas, really is what they are. Yeah, thank you for the chance to clarify. 233, out on the east side of campus, we were able to put in some basketball courts, and we had an area next to that, and we were kind of, what are we going to do? We talked about grass there, and then we talked about decomposed granite, and we went back to the grass as an option. It is in the physical education area. It's really the site on campus where when we eventually see enrollment increase and need additional teaching spaces there, where we would look at providing additional classroom space out in that area. So, and in the meantime, it's a nice grass area for kids to be able to hang out at lunch. 237 was just some wall patch in the gym, 14,000, almost 14,500. 243 is a large one at 42,419. So this was in C building. I believe it was as inspection was happening, the slope of the ceilings, the roofs in C wing required additional sensors. And so this expense was to be able to meet fire code and pass fire inspection. So additional units. So you'll now, if you go to those rooms with the sloped ceilings, you'll see what looks like overkill on units at this point in time, but it does meet code.
You lost me there. Slope units, I don't get it. What sort of sensors?
So these are fire alarm. These are fire systems. Yeah. Sorry.
Okay.
Yeah. And the slope of the roof is it gets to a height and a slope that additional sensors were required to be able to pass inspection.
Okay.
Scrolling down for myself here, most of these other ones are pretty small. 260 down quite a ways, just about $40,000. Turns out the 80-year-old gas line piping into science rooms wasn't in the greatest condition. So again, something we tried to reuse. Upon testing, we didn't have adequate pressure. Had a little bit of leaking in a couple locations when it was pressured. So we spent that $40,000 to make sure the science labs are safe with regards to the gas service into them. And the last one of big money here was 274, and that's to install an irrigation booster pump on the campus. It also turned out when you got new landscaping in and such, that there wasn't adequate water pressure to water all these new locations. So placing a booster pump on the campus so that irrigation can be done effectively, and plants that were planted don't die, dry up and die, and all that kind of stuff. So that.
May I
Oh,
add
please,
one
yeah,
thing to
Mike.
that?
Yeah,
Okay.
please.
Okay, and as far as the booster pump is concerned, if you go back to the first page, you notice change order 225.1, which sort of looks innocuous, but Cal Water required
Yeah.
a backflow double check device to be changed to something else. They required that both on the fire water line and on the domestic water line. The effect of that is that changes the water pressure throughout campus from about 40 pounds at each of the toilets and the water lines, including the irrigation lines, down to someplace between 20 and 25 pounds, which means you don't get pressure to run your sprinklers. You don't get much pressure at all, even to flush your toilets. So we decided we had to put in the booster pump in order to bring the pressure back up far enough that you could, basically take care of those issues, both the irrigation and also toilets. And at some point when we start talking about infrastructure and the joys of sewer lines at some point, we'll be able to show you exactly what the effect is if you don't have enough water pressure, or if you go from when the school was last in operation, which is what, a 5 pound or a 5 gallon flush from the toilets down to what's now a 1.2 gallon flush, what the effect on your sewer lines is for that. So please keep that in mind when we look at the booster pump for that. We're trying to get the water pressure back up so you get an effective water pressure throughout the domestic water lines in the site.
Thanks, Mike.
Yep, I believe it. I saw an office building in San Francisco that went to no flow units in the men's restroom. And boy, did that rot those pipes.
Exactly.
Big mistake.
Brian, is there a separate irrigation system for the sports fields?
Yeah, we have a well, Gary, that we irrigate the fields with.
And you're using Cal Water on all of this landscaping around the school and within the school, correct?
Yeah, everything, inside the campus, right immediately around and inside the campus is on the domestic. Yeah, everything out on the athletic fields and et cetera is on our well.
Okay, any other questions from committee members?
I think my question would be, are there any outstanding change orders that the committee will see that are still under negotiations?
We anticipate at least one more for each project. So you'll see a change order 10 for renovation project and a change order 2 for the kitchen window project, I believe. Mike, you might know more about that, but I think that's where we're headed.
Yeah, we will see one more change order for each of the projects. There will be no more change orders after those 2.
And the no cost time extension, is that really the true case there? I mean, we're not going to see them asking for additional GCs overhead or whatnot for the last change order.
We will not see that on the renovation project, okay, which is what you're looking at on change order number 9. You will likely see one for the kitchen project, because that one, I believe, was the original completion date on that was in April. They will now be done, I believe, end of June. So you will likely see one for change order number 2 on the kitchen.
Okay, last call for committee member questions. Okay, seeing none. Comments or questions from the public? Okay. So I will entertain a motion to approve change order 9 as a valid Measure Q expenditure.
Move to approve. It's Andrea.
Thank you. Can I have a second?
I'll second. It's Julie.
Thank you, Julie. So all in favor of approving change order 9 as a valid Measure Q expenditure indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed?
Did we lose Georgette? I don't see her on the view anymore.
Georgette has disappeared.
Maybe she's coming back. Maybe her connection may have been unstable.
Yeah. I'll keep an eye for it. Thanks, Lee, for pointing that out. I'll keep
Okay. So
an eye to it.
we will delay that official vote. Lee, if you don't mind, we can move on to the window project change orders.
Sure. Again, Mike is going to elucidate us and Brian as well, but this is change order number 1 for the.
Georgette is back in the meeting if we want to finish that vote.
Oh, okay.
Sorry to interrupt.
No problem.
Georgette, are you there? I don't see you on my screen.
No, she's not on my screen either.
Oh, I admitted her.
There
Sorry.
she is.
Yeah,
She's
there
coming.
she is.
There's Georgette.
She's undercover going as one of her daughters. So
Sorry, it kicked me out. I am so sorry, Mike. You were saying that not for the Dixon Middle School, we won't see additional costs for the time extension, but you said for the kitchen, yes, correct? That's what I got.
That is correct. We have, since we're taking up the kitchen next, you can actually ask that, because one of the the change order requests in here is for a no-cost time extension to March 15th. And then we can discuss what happens after March 15th at that point, if you'd like.
Okay.
Okay.
Yes, I think I'll wait for my next question later. It
Okay.
has nothing to do with change order.
Any
So,
other
real quick, I'm sorry, one more. Is the July 9th date, is that specifically when you guys say completion date?
That is make sure, okay. That is the completion date, both of construction and of all of the documentation necessary to send to the state architect's office to close the project, okay? So when we say completion date, that includes both the actual physical work and all the documentation work. Documentation work will usually take a couple of weeks after the physical work is completed.
Okay.
Okay.
All right, Georgette, I'm sorry, I missed seeing you drop off. We were actually voting on approving the change order number 9, and then we noticed you weren't there. So let's redo that vote. So we had 2 motions, and now we're voting on approving change order 9 as a valid Measure Q expenditure. So those in favor indicate by saying aye.
Aye, as
Okay.
presented.
As
Aye.
presented. Okay. Andrea? Gary?
Sorry. I had made the motion, so yes, I.
Okay,
Approved as presented.
approved it, but what?
As presented.
As presented. All right.
We
Those
don't,
opposed?
we don't approve these things. They've already been approved.
We're approving them as members of the CBOC. even
In
though-
our best judgment.
Yes, thank you. Anyone opposed? Very good. So much for change order number 9. We can move on to I guess, I'm sorry, back to our change order 1, the windows.
So change order number 1 is for the kitchen window project,
Yes.
which, as you recall, is a separate project, separate bid. And I'm sure Mike will help elucidate that. I love your cat, Tad.
Ah, she Zoom bombed me again.
Yeah.
Now sleeping on my desk.
All right, Mike, you're muted, Mike.
There are people who wish I could be that way all the time. Okay, anyway, this is change order number 1 for the kitchen and windows project. I will tell you that, and I alluded to this when we were talking about the inspector's change order. There were a number of unforeseen circumstances that came up, particularly dealing with structural framing. As you go through this and you note on this, including, let me see here, PCO 8 included on this on the first page. I want to say starting around PCO 17 through 17, 18, 19, 21, and 23, 20, a number of these are all structural, dealing with the updates to bring the kitchen and the multi-purpose building up to current codes, okay? Both for the structural framing and also for some of the systems within the building, okay? Particularly the mechanical systems. So, are there any questions anybody has in particular on any of these?
Mike, I just had a question. You might want to talk about the credit. There's a fairly large credit
Yeah.
in here on PCO number
yes.
2. Always
Yes.
like to talk about credits.
Okay, well, well, what the contractor Burco did in its original bid was, because this was a building that really hadn't been touched in a long time, they included what was called a DSA contract contingency. That was money that was set aside for use in order to pay for additional plan submittals to DSA if there were a large number of additional structural or other code issues that had to be taken care of. There were a large number of them, but not as much as they had anticipated. So they've given us back in excess of $170,000 of that funding as part of the contract, okay? So that will knock the net cost down considerably for this.
Wasn't that a bid contract?
Yes, it was. And it was actually an identified line item in the bid.
All right.
Was that?
Yeah.
That's unusual.
Actually, no, it's not. If you're doing a renovation of an old building with unknown conditions, there's always a contingency in there very specifically for that. And the contractor can address that to whatever degree he wants to. He can either put in 0 or whatever dollar amount he wants. In this case, the contractor put in what they thought was a credible amount. And when they didn't spend all of it, to be honest, rather than sucking it up and putting it someplace else, they gave it back to the district, which I think is a very good thing and speaks well to this particular contractor. I will tell you, I have had contractors try to hide it amongst their other numbers. And I'm sure Lee has done the same thing, in her experience.
So I think, on a lot of these items, what basically, I mean, you guys did a tour. Some of you had a tour. Did you see the multipurpose building and this room in particular?
We didn't go in there, just safety wise.
Okay.
Open. Yeah. too
Yeah,
many
so
things
what
open.
what you have is just a very, very old kitchen. There was basically no scope work at all in this area of the campus. And that decision was made to make the project smaller. And as with so many things on this project, that decision needed to be changed. So we went out to bid for the separate project, and that bid included the window replacement, which is also was a very wise thing to do. And that basically is done. And they look fantastic, and they are energy efficient and wonderful. And the kitchen likewise will be up to current standards, and the room will look very different and will be a very, very good asset for that school. So again, we see this bid, the separate bid, but basically you have all these structural things that probably, I don't know, Mike, if you think this, you probably would have had some change orders on this building no matter what, no matter when you went at this, because of the lot of underground things that we didn't know about.
No, I would say that whether or not you packaged this as part of the original bid or split it out, what you did in the kitchen area was you basically took everything out back to the structural studs, okay? You still have your boiler system up on the mezzanine, which is weight bearing. And so in order to make any changes inside that space, you had to bring everything up to current structural code, which is much different than what it was built as. What, 30, I think that building was put up in the late 70s, if I'm not mistaken.
1978. Yes,
Yeah.
1978.
Yeah. So the structural codes have changed significantly since then. So you had to update all of that and basically change out the whole thing. When I came in on February 1st and walked through there, they literally had everything out to the building studs. Yeah, there was nothing in there, and they were cutting up the floor, put in the electrical lines and the water. So that is going to be basically an entirely new space. For any of you that remember the old one, it will not look anything like what you remember. So what you've done is, whether you put that in the old bid or the new one, or you change ordered it into either one of those, you would have still incurred the costs. Okay.
So real quick, what changed in the code from 1978 to current?
Oh, Lord.
Was it earthquake? What was the focus? To be a little more general. Was it earthquake, load bearing? What was it?
Yes.
And yes,
Keep going, Tad. It's all yes. Just
Everything.
electric. Yeah. I mean, you name it.
Yeah.
Yeah. Sorry for chuckling.
Yeah.
Those of us who've had any, and Mike, I mean, Lee and Mike are experts in this. I'm a rank amateur. I've been riding in the back of the truck watching the drive happen. Boy, it's everything.
Yeah, as you say, it's been a lot of it has been earthquake safety, which has driven a lot of the structural codes, but just updates on materials and other things. How you connect electrical and plumbing lines, which basically requires bracing, which then requires changes to structural. It's been essentially a 40-year avalanche, if you want to put it that way. Okay, it's been like drinking from a fire hydrant.
Yeah, cascade effect. One small change triggers a whole bunch of them.
Right, and when you get a lot of changes, yeah, it's like going over Niagara Falls.
Okay, so I think the CBOC was able to get into that building before construction happened in 2019. So this is the building that had the stage on one side and the kitchen on the other?
Yes.
Okay, is that stage still there?
Yes.
Yeah, the stage is there and not really getting work. The focus in there is overwhelmingly in that kitchen. serving area. It really is going to be a whole new space.
Okay. Other questions from committee members? All right, I don't see
Wait,
anyone.
sorry.
Okay, go ahead.
So Mike, what's the completion date right now as for the kitchen?
Okay. Currently,
I know we're gonna go
believe-
look at the schedule, but
Right. I believe it's around the 15th of June. You have, as part of this change order, a no-cost time extension to March 15th. Because I believe the original one was sometime in January, so we've bumped it up to March. There will be another one that runs from March through June that will come in change order number 2, and we are negotiating that now.
okay, thank you.
Any other questions? Okay, I don't see anyone from the public that is still with us. So I will take a motion to approve this change order 1 as a valid measure Q expenditure as presented to the committee.
I'll make a motion to approve as presented to the committee.
Thank you, Julie.
I second it. It's Georgette.
Thank you, Georgette. All in favor of approving change order 1 as valid measure Q expenditure as presented to the committee, indicate saying aye.
Aye.
And we got thumbs up from Andrea. Anyone opposed? Very good. Done with change order 1. So let's
Can I
move
ask
on.
a quick question, Tad?
Sure.
Okay, now that we've moved on to the kitchen renovation, if you don't mind me just saying like that.
Yeah, that's
Um,
fine.
Are there any issues with perhaps the architect, having any design errors or omissions as it was, fitted out? And does it impact anything in terms of, added cost or, of course, time and all? Because most of these that I see are typically unforeseen and district directed, but I'm just curious if there were any that are coming from the actual designer themselves.
We don't have any listed as errors and omissions, Georgette. And basically on this project, as we've talked about, even though it's been very, very frustrating to see, I'm sure for all of you folks and for the board to see the change orders come, we've talked about how that happened. And really the choice to downscope this project and then later we realized we've got to add to it. I don't think that you could really put that down to the architect per se. Errors and omissions, I don't believe we've had any on the change order. And I think we've talked about the difficulty of trying to go after an architect, not to say we wouldn't if there was an issue, but it's very difficult and has a very high rate of failure on school districts' parts to go after an architect for errors and omissions. In this instance, the number of small items of changes, I don't believe that we've put it to errors and omissions. Mike, you could chime in, but no, on this, even though it's frustrating, I don't believe that that will happen.
Okay. I'll simply comment that I do not see that in this particular project. Lee has briefed me on the history of the project and how we basically came to the situation we're in now. But from what I've seen of the documentation and what I've seen out on the site, I cannot say that there have been any errors or oversights by the design team on this one.
Thank you.
Yeah, generally speaking, my impression is you've had a very good working relationship with your major contractors.
Very much so. Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. and our management consultants here as well,
Yes.
except for Jim. Jim's gone, so we can
Except for
talk back.
Jim. Yeah,
Yeah.
except for Jim.
Yeah, we can talk
This is
bad
terrible.
about him all we want.
Yeah.
He was awful, crying out loud.
Interesting character. I enjoyed meeting him.
Yeah, good
Cool.
guy. Did a great
So-
job for him.
We can move on to the timeline update.
Thank you, Tad. This is our summary timeline that you have seen at every meeting. There are some updating things in here. I've pushed out the JKMS completion. You now see it as July/August 2021. We're talking about July here, as Mike has talked about tonight. On Anderson, phase 1 and phase 2, it's broken out, and those are the potential timelines. We are just getting into Anderson right now. We're at the very early stages, which I'll talk about a little later. But for right now, this is a summary. As you see, phase 2, it goes out so far as we've discussed before. This is completely dependent on receiving state funding. Phase 2, and actually phase 1 is also. Phase 1, though, we know we're going to get state funding because it's just a matter of timing. We've been approved for it. We're in line. Phase 2 is, and that's JKMS state funding that then the district in essence fronted the money for the project, and then we can use that state funding for projects going forward. And that the intention is to use it for Anderson. And then we have the second amount of state funding that we will apply for, and that is for Anderson. And that pushes it out to 27, 28, barring any other revenue.
Very good. Any questions from committee members?
And this is for information
oh.
only. Sorry.
I don't know if this is outside the agenda topic, but the question that I have would be, now that we're going to be planning for Anderson, doesn't the state or isn't the state or the federal providing funding to the district to assist with like HVAC systems or whatnot? So are we looking at, is the district looking at perhaps, trying to tackle that now that will hopefully eventually, help out the Measure Q project later on?
Thanks for that question, Georgette. I'll address it. I talked about this a little bit at our board meeting last week, and Lee and I have had, I've had conversation with Lee, and I've had separate conversation with Mike around these issues. So there's no funding that actually says you should or shall use the dollars for facility needs, including HVAC or other provisions that could be viewed as related to health or safety. However, so there's nothing required. However, we are able to do so. So we've had some preliminary conversations around, very, very preliminary. So there's no promises or guarantees with this. So we've had some preliminary conversations around the HVAC units at Anderson, and if we might be able to utilize some of these COVID-related funds to cover that expense at Anderson or not. And honestly, another area of facilities expenditures is related to our transition of the Maine Prairie, the alternative ed program, out of its current lousy little dilapidated, inadequate to teach in the modern era campus over on C Street, over to the now vacant C.A. Jacobs campus. And we believe that we're justified in spending dollars on that particular move because you have ancient portables with inefficient HVAC units that you can't find parts to repair even. You've got leaks, you've got no science lab, you've got no common area. There's all sorts of things. Restrooms are small and bad, all sorts of things like that. So we'd also be looking at expending some of those one-time assistance dollars on making doing some fixing to C.A. Jacobs, we're obviously talking about the space that is used for 100 kids instead of absolutely every inch of the campus. So yes, is the short answer to your question. We're looking at using some of those dollars to help defray expenses on things that will be intended, like Anderson has been on the radar forever. And the C.A. Jacobs location for alt ed is pretty new, but it's also something that we feel that we should do and will do. The board has indicated its very strong intent for us to make that move. What will not be used on the C.A. Jacobs campus are any Measure Q dollars. That site was not included within the bond language. And so it would be only alternative sources that would be used. We could, and yeah, so just to make clear on that, we're not talking about using Q dollars on the campus that was not included in the bond language.
So short answer was going to be yes, there will be some
Answer is yes.
money.
Yes.
Yep.
Sorry.
Short answer is yes. Yeah.
I got focused on the CA. Okay.
Yep. Short answer is yes. Yeah. And in particular, you can do a couple things at Anderson. So you could focus on HVAC. We don't have a kitchen and a proper food serving area in Anderson. You could do something with these dollars on that as well. You really could use, this COVID money on any facility thing that you can make a persuasive case is going to improve really the overall educational experience for kids. But in particular, where we feel most comfortable in directing dollars that way, if we can say this food serving area is healthier and cleaner and more efficient. These HVAC units provide a greater level of air quality and blah, 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 those different types of things. But yes, we're looking to use these dollars amidst everything else that we need to spend on post-COVID.
Okay, and then last question, given that we're already towards the end of the JKMS project, has the district actually put together some sort of maintenance plan for specifically, I'm going to talk about JKMS, so that way we don't see later on 10 years, 20 years later that, we're starting to see some issues in terms of the main systems.
So there are, and I can let Mike speak to this perhaps more effectively than I can. Go ahead, Mike, and I'll see if I've got anything to throw in at the end.
Well, basically what we're doing is because we're replacing so many of the systems within the campus, we're having the contractor essentially draw up what are called the maintenance manuals for each of the systems, okay? So you'll have one for your HVAC, you'll have one for lighting, you'll have one, actually you'll probably have several binders for the kitchen because you have a couple of different systems within there. But those all will be conveyed to the district as part of the closeout documentation process, that 2 to 4 week paper push period I mentioned, where you're not banging hammers anymore, but you're putting together all the documentation. So yes, that gets provided to the district, and that provides the backbone for the maintenance program on that site.
I was going to add also that Mark Monticello, who is our interim maintenance supervisor director, did submit and presented the district's preventive maintenance plan and manual that the district uses at the January 21st, 2021 board meeting. That is online for folks if you want to look back on that agenda, and it spells out in great detail all the maintenance that they do on a preventive basis for every school. And I would dovetail onto Mike's as well. When you have a bunch of new things, obviously you maintain, but the repair rate is very low because this is all new. So then actually there'll be a lot less work to do at JKMS on any kind of repair and fixing and more on this preventive maintenance. Right. But you take a look at the January 21st board agenda for the district's preventive maintenance manual that they use for every school, including JKMS.
Perfect.
And the
Thank you.
last thing I would add is, since it's all new systems, you have warranties for systems.
Mhm.
So if something breaks within the warranty period, the district doesn't take care of it. They pick up the phone and call the appropriate person and say, guess what? Your boiler broke. Come fix it.
Right.
Okay?
Thank you. That was it.
Great.
Okay, any other questions before we move on? I see it's listed as action, but I don't see that we have an action to take. This was just information and discussion.
Yeah, it's information only.
Yeah. Okay, so I think we're ready to move on to the two summaries. We have a fiscal report summary and a vendor payment summary. Both are just information only. These are the massive 20+ page printouts from the Excel summary of, what is it, Fund 21, if I remember. So I don't have any specific comments on them. Georgette is our resident expert. So see what Georgette has.
I'm slowly opening it.
Yeah.
Don't have any comments right now. I don't think I have any comments. I had to really dig deeper on this.
Okay.
Thank you.
Um,
Although I think I will mention, as part of putting together the report, I did request for a different report where I would see beginning and ending balance every fiscal year for every contract. I think I only saw like 4 or 5 vendors, and I'm not sure if I have everything. And so maybe I'll respond back to Miss Monique, who sent me the information. But basically, all I really am asking is for this report that we're looking this, what did we call it? The account transaction by details. I just want to know the rollover from the prior fiscal year. What's the balance for the next fiscal year? All the transactions underneath that and the ending balance. That's all I really wanted to see, all in one report. So I'll reach out again to Miss Monique.
so while we're talking about that, you indicated you were close to having a draft for the committee members to look at for our annual report to the community. Can you update us on that?
Yes, so I'm looking further now on the reports just to make sure, because again, if I just have that one report, it'll make my life a lot easier. But I'm rereading, the reports provided to the fiscal reports provided to us to make sure that it actually matches from what we've told the public in our prior annual report. So I would say that we're off topic. I guess we'll talk about the report now. I would say that I probably need maybe another week to look at it, to look at everything for that fiscal year, and then I'll be able to send it to all the committee members.
Excellent. So I was just looking for, opportunity to have time to review it before the May meeting. So
But everyone is more than welcome to go ahead and take a look at the prior report and provide your updates. That would be great, rather than waiting for mine, because I'm only going to be reporting on the fiscal side, the contracts and encumbrances, right? That's all I'm really looking at and the schedule. So if the rest of the subcommittees would like to provide their little blurb on, I'm so sorry, I didn't mean it like that. Their blurb on their subcommittees, if they want to go ahead and report that, provide it to me, that's fine. Or if you guys want to wait on the draft report without your information, that's fine as well.
excellent. So Lee, last year you were kind enough to review the chair's report. I think it was like 3 pages in Word. Would you be so kind as to review it again? If I can get it to you in the next few weeks?
Yeah, absolutely. And also, I think since Georgette, I think we kind of have a template now from last year. I think
Correct.
it would make it a lot easier. Your question, Monique is here in the meeting. I'm not sure that she will be able, you asked for a beginning balance on a contract for every vendor at the beginning of the year and what has been spent and then what we're going to roll over or close out. I guess I would ask Monique if she has that information, or, I mean, it's basically kind of a combination of contract, which goes over year to year to year. So her stuff doesn't have that. We may have to put that together like we did last year, Georgette. We might be able to do that.
Okay, so Miss Lee, just like the chair report, most likely you'll have time to take a look at the draft annual as well.
Absolutely. That's my intention. Yeah, yes, I'm absolutely ready for that.
Perfect.
And maybe I could get you, since I know you need that, the contractor vendor information with the contracts that are still there, and then from last year to this year, beginning and toward till present. I could help on that as well.
Okay, thank you.
Monique, is that, oh, Monique left. I'm not sure. I think I'm correct in saying that it's more of a combination of contract and your reports.
Yes, and I think what would be a good idea is if Georgette and I, and if you'd like to attend as well, Lee, schedule just 15-20 minutes to talk about the information I shared. I think that because it was a report where I needed to consolidate information.
Right.
And so we can make sure that you have exactly what you need.
I would be happy to participate in that. Just let me know.
Okay, thank you.
I have a question for Monique. I'm looking at this summary report, and on March 18th, 2021, there's the entry in there for River City Bank escrow account.
Yeah.
What's that about?
The retention payment.
Yeah.
Yeah, Monique, do you want to talk about that, or do you want me to? Okay.
You've got it. Go ahead, Lee.
So Gary and everybody, state law requires us to, well, actually, we like to have a retention payment. We hold back an amount of money from every payment to the contractor. This is to the general contractor now. I'm not talking about architects. I'm not talking about any other vendor, but to a contractor, construction contractor. Used to be a 10%. So every time, like say Burka would bill us for $100,000, we would pay them $90,000 and hold back $10,000. That's every time. Now, because the contractors fought for this, now it's only 5%. So we hold back $5,000 on that $100,000 payment request. So contractors often ask for it to be put in, that $5,000 to be put into an escrow account where it makes interest. Even though we're talking about very little interest these days, it still makes a little bit of interest. So it's in an interest-bearing account. That's River City Bank. And instead of us, or I say the district, making that very little bit of interest, but the district will take whatever it can get. And so they will have that. And when the project's ended, they will get that retention payment and the interest. So that's what that is. And that retention amount is in River City Bank.
So the account balance of 2.5 million negative means that that's money that they have withdrawn. That's a balance in there for the contractor.
I don't know what you're referring to, Gary.
Well, well, Monique would know. The expenditure they show for this period so far is 15,000, and then the account balance is 2,578,000 and some other, but it's a minus figure, so that would be a credit for the.
Oh, I think you're talking, Monique, he's on page 21 and 22 of the fiscal report.
I'm on page 23 of 26.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, 22, 23 of 26. At the top where it shows the negative That's an accounting piece, Gary. Doesn't mean that there's negative money in it.
Well, minuses don't ever always mean negative.
Correct.
They can mean a positive balance too, depending on which side of the ledger you're on.
Correct.
So this is an expense account, and what you're seeing is that the expenditures exceeded the budget. For example, you'll see that there's no, on those two budget lines where it says adopted budget, revised budget, there was no budget assigned to it. So it's a bookkeeping entry. And so when this report was pulled at the end of March, we had not identified a budget. However, we did pay the invoices for this.
And also, it doesn't mean that there's no money for it or that it isn't in the construction project budget. It's an accounting.
Well,
part.
I assume that this is cash we're talking about here, not the budget. So
This is actually budget.
Mhm.
This is budget, not cash.
So Monique, to fix that or to reconcile that, what do you need to do, I guess?
So we're in the reconciliation phase right now. And so we put an entry in to move to assign a budget to that particular line, to that particular account. So the cash is there, the money is there, just in that particular account, we just haven't assigned a budget there. And once we assign the budget there based upon the purchase order amount, then that negative where it says account balance, it will be gone.
Yeah. It's a fund accounting thing, I guess.
Yes,
Yes.
yes, that's what it is.
So Lee, on the summary by vendor, I just looked through the vendor names. I didn't recognize what that Delta One security was.
Yeah,
Yeah.
Delta, yeah, I can speak to that. Delta One, Tad, is a security company. We've had providing overnight security at the site. Two reasons. One, as we've been transitioning, so especially as we had windows torn open, those types of things, and making sure that things were safe until we've gotten in. And two, because, and you saw the change order around some of those fire alarm devices and such. So because the fire alarm system has not been signed off on as complete, while it does operate across the campus, we are obligated to have a fire watch. And so that security company also functions as our overnight fire watch. Staff on campus during the day and the Burco crew are the fire watch during the daytime. So providing security and functioning as a fire watch.
So you had someone on site 24/7.
So we bring the security company in, they're in there from 6 p.m. till I think 5 a.m.
Yeah, I think it's 4 a.m.
Yeah, 4 a.m. Yeah, sorry. And then our staff comes in. So yeah. And they've done a good job actually of chasing some of the young males of Dixon out of the facility. Yeah, we've had no vandalism there, knock on wood. And we're in the process of getting our surveillance cameras up and running. We're all wired for that, et cetera. So that will alleviate, fire alarms done and cameras up, we'll be able to get rid of that, that security coverage.
Excellent. I am sure after the first group got chased out, they let their friends know this is not a viable entertainment project anymore.
Hopefully so. Yeah,
Yep.
Hopefully so.
Good.
So Tad, this does, this got past me. It got, this Delta One, I actually have it sitting in front of me. It was a contract that was approved by the board back in January. So my apologies, it needs to go to the CBOC for a validation.
Yeah, Excellent. We'll get a few of those at the May meeting. As you mentioned, there are going to be some cleanup items, so
Right.
that will be fine. Any more discussion on the fiscal report and the vendor summary? Okay, no one from the public is out there for questions, so I think we can move on to looking at the budget and expenditure reports for the various renovation projects.
Thank you, Tad. So we have a number of reports, as we always do at every meeting. The first one will be the master program budget, which is the vertical sheet that looks at like a summary sheet with
Yep.
lots of different
So-
colors.
So Lee, just so you know, the committee was provided with black and white ones for this meeting. So
I'm
just
sorry.
keep that in mind as you work through the numbers, because we won't have the color code to help.
Okay, that's interesting. Okay, good to know, Tad. I will see what I can do about that. Okay, so on this master program budget, there are a bunch of circles and arrows this time. I wanted to really hone in on, as we are not nearly done with Measure Q. That continues on. We're done with the biggest project, but there is, like we talked about, there's money still in Measure Q. And for the CBOC, there is a role to play, absolutely. So there is what we'll see is a lull in construction, but like Brian said, that does not mean money is not being expended. It is, because we have planning and design, testing, all kinds of things as we line up the team for the next big project, which is Anderson. You see here, I wanted to really hone in on the fact of revenue. And just make it very clear that as we've done this whole facilities program for Dixon Unified, it has always included any revenue in it that is possible. You heard, we just talked about COVID as a possibility. That will make its way into this report once the board approves it, if they do. And I don't know what amount that is, if it happens. So you'll see a whole program, which includes all revenue sources that are expended on these projects, including the biggest one, of course, is Measure Q. The next one is state funding, which is the next biggest one. You've got interest, and you've got now maybe, hopefully, some COVID money. So you've got all of that, and that always has been the plan for a facilities program. It always is in every district. You look at what is eligible to go after state money, and you grab that state money when you can on eligible projects. So that's what you see in here. What's interesting is as we come down, we know that JKMS has taken a large chunk of money. So we're very, very mindful about cash on hand and cash on hand versus the overall budget. And we kind of talked about that. Actually, Monique talked about that difference just a few minutes ago. So as we look at the top part of that report, we see the overall planned program is over $38 million. But do we have that cash on hand? No, because we have to wait for that state funding. So if you look at around the $6.2 million in state funding, so you say, okay, so take 38 million minus the 6.2, and you got around 31 something million. And so we're very mindful of, okay, what is it that we've actually spent on the projects so far? And you can see that expensed so far, let's see, is around 21 million, but it will soon finish up much higher than that as we finish up with JKMS. So I am anticipating that we will have, I'm thinking about 4 million cash on hand. And so why that is important? That's important because one, we're going to start doing contracts for architects for Anderson. We can't let a contract of any kind, if we don't have cash on hand with it, but particularly any kind of substantial one, like an architect or you know, the biggest one would be a construction contract. So let's say that why this is, we're waiting, we would have to wait for state funding is let's say we do the plan for phase 1, Anderson. It goes to DSA, Division of State Architect. It gets approved by DSA. It comes out of DSA. If we don't have that state funding for that project that we think we're going to spend money on, we can't award that bid. We could go out to bid, but that costs money. If we don't have the cash, we can't award the bid to a contractor. You can't do that clearly, right? It makes sense. You can't award a bid to a contractor if you don't have the cash to pay that contractor right then and there. So we are very mindful of this phasing and the cash on hand. And so I just wanted you to kind of see that and see the limitations of where we're working from now on. The second piece of it is if you go down to the bottom, and it just talks about phase 1, phase 2, how we might think about that. And that hasn't been decided. It's going to have a lot to do with what the architects and engineers, how they see the phasing as might be the most cost efficient, and also the most efficient on how you deal with an occupied campus. So we don't want to pay for extra things that we don't have to pay for, like interim housing for students, things like that, if we don't have to. But those are all the things that you weigh out. And is it more cost efficient to do one project all at one time? Yes, but we won't be able to because we're going to get those 2 tranches of state funding. So it's going to be necessarily, as it stands now, 2 phases. So I just wanted to point that out, that as we reach into this next phase of Measure Q and the facilities program here at Dixon Unified, that we are going into a very strategic time to look at the next projects. And you'll be hearing more about Anderson. So that would be this report. I would entertain questions on it. I'd like to go to the specific projects if we could, and then round back up onto the summary if we could, because this might make more sense.
Sure.
Okay, the next one is the Dixon. You see this every time also. It's called Dixon USD Facil Project. So Facil Program, so Facilities Program. And these, as you recall, are the program-wide expenditures, such as any staff related, which is rows, any money that is spent on staff, which is related to bond, my work with you folks, my work with general board meetings, things like that. And you can see the money is actually pretty small. There are contingencies set up in this as well, but we don't anticipate actually using those in program. We'll use those for specific projects. One change that happens always every time is we always add for staff related costs, there's staff expenditures, right? And then the other one is this month we saw, like last month, there was a small expenditure on Hancock Park DeLong, who has turned in now the state application for eligibility for Anderson. So there's a little bit of work on that. And those are the only changes. We're well within budget on this. We're not overspending on program-wide expenditures. That's that one. That's kind of boring and kind of, it's interesting though, because you need to have this because there are program-wide expenditures that cannot be specifically assigned to a project. And that's really important. So if you do templates for documents, things like that, my work here on the CBOC is program, not, I don't time out. I spent 10 minutes on this project and 10 minutes on this project and 10 minutes on that project. So that's what this goes for. Questions on that one? Okay.
Okay, any questions from the committee on the facilities program report? Okay, don't see any. Let's move on, Lee.
Great. So thank you very much. John Knight Middle School renovation project. As we know, this is the very active project. So you see lots of expenditures. if you compare the report from 2 months ago, 3 months ago now, to now, you would see those changes. And basically what we have now is you see change order 9 in here, and also change order 1 for the kitchen window project. We have definitely delved into, we have eaten up the contingencies, and we are using up money that we know needs to happen to make this an occupiable and good site, good construction project. But we're beyond the contingencies that even we put together, which were pretty good. So it's an acknowledgement that this project is basically costing what it probably should have at the beginning. I look back on planning documents for the district, and there were definitely this level of need at this facility. So I'm not surprised at all. I'm sorry that it's come in the form of change orders, but like Mike said, we would have had these expenditures anyway. I'd entertain any questions on this one. There's not anything particularly outstanding. Like, it's BERCO payments, school site solution payments for construction management for Mike, testing labs, things like that. Delta One, I believe I put in there. So there's some pretty typical things, but you'll also see that where we are now is at a $24,320,000 project. Entertain any questions on it or comments.
So 24 million, that's all a Measure Q, correct? Or is that just the middle school?
No, this is the John Knight Middle School project, 24 million. And it's the last page of your report for John Knight Middle School renovation project. That does include the window kitchen project as well.
That's everything.
Okay.
Yeah.
That's everything, all up.
Okay.
Miss Lee, I think I asked this before and I don't have my notes. The low voltage, why is that still no actual cost, or like, where does that really fall under?
Okay, great question, Georgette. So we got, or I keep saying we, sorry, the district got a lot of E-rate money, and Mark Monticello and his valiant staff have come in there and they did all the components, they did all the programming, they installed, a huge amount of work. Mark could even talk about this. They programmed all both the software and the hardware, brought the computers over, brought any printer copiers over, and Mark has yet to give me an invoice. I don't think he's going to, actually. So I think largely there is going to be E-rate, and if I see any, I haven't had this discussion with Mark, but if I see any expenditures, I'm holding out there. You see, I did bring it down from 600,000 to 200,000, and Mark way at the beginning told me that's way too much, Lee. But I put that in there as the budget, and if we're under 200,000, and that's even more to the good.
Okay, so we're just waiting for the actual cost then.
Yeah, and I don't know whether Mark even wants to talk right now, but it may not be anything, because it may be taken out of E-rate and then just regular staff time. I don't know.
Well, it'll be good if we can bring it back to Measure Q.
Absolutely.
There's a lot of money that'll come back.
That's
for
good.
sure. Yep.
Yes. It'll be nice to have the final reconciliation on this. We'll see some saving. Well, I call it savings from budget, but we clearly know that we've gone over budget on this project, but this is what it needed. So that's that on that. If I take any more questions.
All right. Any other questions on John Knight Middle School? Okay, let's move on to Anderson, Lee.
Thank you, Tad. So I'm on Anderson. There's no activity this month, but we will start to have activity. We are starting up our programming and planning phase. We are working on the architect agreement, with Rainforest Grau and Associates. RGA is what they like to be known as. So by the next time we have a CBOC meeting, you will see expenditures in here, or I should say encumbrances. We will have an architect's agreement and the board will approve that hopefully. We'll have a master architect agreement that lays out the terms and conditions and all the provisions of how we work together. But we may not have an actual fee on it yet, because that will come as an addendum number 1 once we figure out the scope. So one of the things that we do is always lessons learned. And on Anderson, we want to make really clear about realistic expectations. So you notice that I'm holding on about $5.6 million for phase 1. And that we have phase 1, phase 2, right? We're at around 10 million. If we get some extra COVID, that's great. Then it increases. But we haven't really figured out exactly what phase 1 and phase 2 will be. We know at Anderson, and I had a meeting with my kickoff meeting with the principal, and we are setting up our committee meetings. So there'll be an Anderson Facilities Committee. We gather a lot of input, including the principal, including the committee. We'll have meetings before they let out in June. I'll get the superintendent's priorities, the board priorities, and the maintenance department. Mark and I are hoping to schedule a maintenance department meeting. Mike is going to help out and really be involved in programming and planning as well. And I really value his expertise and experience on this. And we will have a very good idea of scope before anything else happens. We will figure out priorities, and basically what we know is that there'll be a long list of things that we want to do with Anderson, and there won't be enough money to do it. We already know that. That is reality. So where that line gets drawn is the question. And so a combination of all these inputs, with the board being the final decider, will talk to us about where that line gets drawn. Like JKMS, Anderson, and I think Mike talked about this, Anderson is in great need of infrastructure. It's at the oldest elementary school in the district. We have roofing, HVAC, electrical, water, sewer, paving, structural, Americans with disabilities, code compliance, a ton of things like that. That's not even talking about the issue of, hey, the school doesn't even have a kitchen, things like that. So in my walkthrough with the principal, and we will do the CBOC needs to schedule a tour. We can probably do that this summer when the kids aren't there. That would be a perfect time to do it. And you guys can see a before picture of it, and we can point out all the things. So what will be interesting is, we have to set up these priorities, but we're going to be very clear that I think Mike and I think Brian's on board. We've got to do infrastructure. We have to do infrastructure. You don't want leaking roofs. You don't want an air conditioning system that doesn't work or doesn't even exist in the MP room. You don't want to not have that, and then you fix up carpets. You can't do that. You just can't. That's just not how you do it. So you need to have that basic, the envelope of the building needs to be good, and the systems need to be good. I don't believe that even with the money that we have, that we will be able to address even all the infrastructure needs there. Here's a prime example. I love that school's entrance. If you've been to Anderson, you see a very historic entrance, a beautiful tile covered entrance. And it is not compliant with Americans with the Disabilities Act. There is no ramp. It's just stairs. So how it's happening right now is anybody in a wheelchair or who cannot get up those stairs go around to another entrance, and that is not compliant with ADA. So just that alone, just the solution to that will be an interesting and expensive proposition, possibly. So just that one item. And there's a number of items that can help that school out, but we know that the infrastructure is needed. The balancing act will be, yes, Lee, all this boring infrastructure that will be invisible, basically. But can't we do any kind of beautification on the facade or at the entrance or anything else? And that's the balancing act that we have to do. We have to figure that out. You'll be seeing more and more reports on this. And like I said, the Anderson expenditure report will become much more important for these meetings than it has been before.
So you mentioned RGA. Are they going to go in there and kind of make a list of top priority to low priority, and we draw the line somewhere to get the budget to match that?
They are just one source of the input.
Okay.
Like I mentioned, so we have, let's throw, and I didn't throw the architects in there, of course, architects and engineers. They will take a look at the three things that the vision of the state architect looks at and requires. That is structural integrity, fire and life safety, which is fire alarms, smoke detectors, if we have to do any kind of sprinklers, anything like that, all those things. And then Americans with Disabilities Act, that includes path of travel, ramping, sidewalks, slopes, entrances, the little bump at every door of the classroom, not ADA compliant, the little bump. So things like that that cost money, that will be a lot of what the architect talks about. So you throw in that, you throw in what we see at the site, you throw in what the committee would love, you see what the board would love, we see what the superintendent would love, we see what the maintenance department says are issues, and we throw all those things together and try to get to some prioritization process with the board. And then we'll have a priority list, and then we'll have to draw the line for the budget.
And what's your time estimate for that line drawing?
I don't have that line drawing timeline yet, but as we are in the input gathering right now. So like I say, we're doing the committee meetings. We're going to start that next week, probably next week or the week after that. We'll have several meetings, maybe 2 or 3 meetings. The maintenance department meeting is going to be scheduled here shortly. And so all of these things are starting to happen. Then we'll put all those together, and a prioritization workshop might come in order with the board, but we don't have that scheduled yet.
Thank you. I think it does point out the urgency and necessity to have the CBOC committee members visit Anderson sometime over the summer, because it would really help to have, a good understanding of the items under consideration.
Correct.
Yep.
Also, quick question. So Brian, we had talked about this in budget advisory also. Even the possibility of dispersed students at Anderson to Tremont and Gretchen Higgins and just abandoning that project altogether. Do you have an update on that?
Oh, never talked. Sorry, Julie. Never have had a thought about abandoning that project altogether. We had talked about relocating for a year to the C.A. Jacobs campus. So that option is dead. And especially since we're going to be in phases on the project, we wouldn't have to, it's hard to envision that we would need access to the whole campus at once, typically with stages. And, well, I guess we got to figure that out. We have space at the other 2 sites, and the disbursement of students would really be based on them having space, relocating Anderson students to those sites for the year while a modernization would take place, then bringing them back. We are small enough right now to have 2 elementary schools, but that is going to change with the number of houses coming in. Probably won't change soon enough for us, but we're going to need 3 elementaries, and especially no school on this side of town would be really problematic. Yeah. And it's a nice old school. I mean, it just, John
Oh,
Knight,
yeah.
John Knight Middle School is a nice old school, and we've done I think I'm proud of the work that we've done there to modernize it. And we can do the same thing at Anderson. It's funny, just at the end of our construction meeting yesterday, Mike and I were talking with the architect who's finalizing this project over there, and started a discussion around the costs of new campuses. Right? So
Yes.
he's got, where did he say? Is it in Rockland or Roseville? Somewhere up around there.
Folsom.
Folsom. High school campus are going to build $270 million. Middle school campus, he doesn't have one going. So I said, oh my gosh. So are you talking about a brand new middle school campus, 120 million? He said closer to 150.
Yeah.
I was saying, we built Dixon High for about 71, 72. We opened in 2007. So some time ago, but those 2007 dollars do not equate to $270 million. So yeah, we it's gonna, I don't know how we ever build a new school in this town, again, quite honestly, without a whole bunch more bonding capacity out there based on assessed valuation, and the population has to turn as well. But no, we'll have to relocate kids at one or two times during the project, depending on how it rolls, and that will be to the other elementaries, not to, yeah.
So Brian,
Okay.
I would just add to that we don't actually know that. We haven't started any planning. We think that might happen,
Yeah.
but let's hold on any getting into those details about some planning of moving when we are not even there yet. I would just let, and Brian, you're probably right. You are probably right, but we don't know that yet. Yeah.
That is a good caution on my enthusiasm and interest in this. Yes, thank you.
Yeah,
See, that's why I sign a purchase order saying, let's pay Lee every month.
Thank
Amongst
Yes,
other
agreed. She's
Amongst
awesome.
other important reasons, she is awesome. Yep.
Thank you. All right, so that is that on Anderson. I think with the tour that you folks do, and we'll get into this beginning stuff. And I know JK was kind of frustrating for you folks. And so we're in on the ground floor and you'll see it.
And Michael, I hope you'll participate.
Thank you. I look forward to it.
Good.
Me too.
Okay, so is there any further questions?
Just really quick, I'm assuming, I didn't see a report for the Tremont reconfig and the retaining wall. They're all the same from last time. There's really nothing to report.
Yeah, there's no activity. And in fact, I've talked about that, the security project and the retaining wall project going out into next summer, not this summer.
Okay.
We're going to concentrate on Anderson first.
And Lee, I just have a procedural question. Usually we do the budget expenditure reports early in the agenda. This time it got put at the end. Was that an artifact of Rose or was that intentional?
Was not intentional.
Okay.
I could tell her if you prefer it always at the beginning, Tad, we could always make sure that happens. I give us a rough order, but it is what it ends up being often. But I could certainly make that happen if that's what you prefer.
We've just gotten used to that format, that's all.
Okay.
And in the
We'll
era of
change it up
COVID,
next time.
yeah, the era of COVID, I'm just so tired of changes. Any little thing just irritates me more than it should.
We will put it back the way you want it.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
Last call for questions.
One more. I'm sorry. I'm ready to go to the retaining wall. I didn't see that on the schedule. Is that an actual project?
Okay, so it's interesting because I actually went out to look at the retaining wall today to make sure we were talking about the same one. The retaining wall is on the, I don't know the direction, but as you face the school, it's on the right-hand side. It's a very low, probably 2-foot wooden fence that retains soil from the next door neighbor's yards. There is also a slatted wood fence that sits on top of that dirt. In large portions, it's been overgrown with plants and greenery, and it goes along the entire side of the campus, probably, I'm going to guess 200 feet or so, maybe not that much. It is in a state of disrepair. It is leaning towards the site, and
Excuse me, Lee. I'm
Sure.
sorry to interrupt. Brian just sent me a message. You'll see that he's out of the meeting. He's going to try to get back in, but he might have to end the meeting and we might have to log back in. So if
Okay.
that happens, please just log back in.
Okay, great. Thank you, Monique.
You're welcome.
I see that Mark he's the host. So this is a retaining wall that's been kind of this issue was on the 2016 master plan for the district. So it's an issue that's been flagged as something that's out there. The kids are not in danger. It's not an issue of immediate, like, some bad thing's going to happen. There's orange temporary fencing to it. They don't go up on top of the fence at all, on top of this wall. But I'm in discussion about how to fix this problem. And so that's the answer. It's still kind of in flux. It's been in this state, obviously, for several years, 5 years at least.
Okay, so it'll be added onto the schedule once you guys figure it out. This
If
is
we
all I was
decide it's
saying.
going to be a project with Measure Q.
Okay,
Yes.
cool.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
All right.
All right. Any other comments on the budget expenditure reports? Okay, seeing none, this is an action item. So the committee has been asked to approve these budget expenditure reports as valid Measure Q expenditures as reported to the committee. So could I have a motion for that?
I move to approve.
And I second.
Excellent. All in favor of approving these budget expenditure reports as valid Measure Q expenditures as reported to the committee indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? We got a thumbs up. Excellent.
Thank you.
So we are now to the subcommittee reports website. We haven't done anything on that. I know Mark was in discussions with another website vendor. I don't know if Mark is available to comment on that, but we haven't done anything because I don't know what's going to happen. I know the school district switched vendors and now is considering switching again. So right now we just have the Granica system that does a nice job of, capturing all of the various attachments and backup documents for this. And it's been done that way since November 2019. So in a way it works, but it's not the best way to pull information because you have to go meeting by meeting as opposed to having, all the reports and summaries and minutes just there. So we will have to deal with that at a future time. Contracts, I don't think we have any activity, but I will let committee members speak to both items right now.
No more comment.
No more comments?
No more.
Okay. Um, Final call.
You forgot the audit committee.
Uh, True enough, it's not on the agenda. Gary, do we have anything for the audit committee
No, I
after?
just want to tell Georgette that I will send her some input for that section of the, we have to address the audit. It's one of our requirements to review it.
Yeah, last year I did that, so I'm happy to submit as well on that topic.
Thank you, Gary.
Okay. We can move on for agenda items for future meetings. Not sure what to do with superintendent not being here.
Yes, he said that he was trying to get back in, but he's having a little bit of an issue getting back in. He'll text Mark and hopefully get back into the meeting as quickly as possible. Let me take a peek at the agenda and see if I can assist in his absent. So
Yeah.
let's see.
We're just about
Yeah,
ready.
just
wrap
about ready,
things
yeah,
up.
to wrap up.
Yeah,
He mentioned May 19th.
yeah, and I want to avoid that date. One, I won't be here. I'll be traveling, and also the next day, if I recall, we will have a school board meeting. And I know Rose does not like having to prepare two sets of meeting documents in the same week. So I will work with
That's
superintendent and see it, yes, and see if we can push that maybe 1 week later. But we got time, we can get that scheduled. But for the committee members, no, I won't be here. Particularly, I could do it via Zoom, but if we're going to be back in council chambers at City Hall, it would be best if I was in California. So I'll get that worked out with superintendent, and I'll have to follow up with city manager, see if city council chambers are available.
Okay. And I'll relay that to Brian as well.
Yeah. Other than that, we may be ready to adjourn.
Tad, I would just throw in there that to try to publicize once that next meeting does come up. I mean, we're trying to search for more people to be on the oversight committee. If someone wants to peek in during the meeting and see,
Yeah.
it's not that bad.
So, you go to the school board meetings, I see you there on Zoom just about every time, and I do my 3-minute update, and I get anywhere from 30 people to 400 people, depending on what the topic is at the school board meeting. So that is one way, but I do take your point. We might want to put a little blurb in Dixon Tribune, and I doubt if Independence Voice would publish it, but they might. But other than that, I don't have any good ideas for generating interest. Okay.
I do. So we need to say that it is a meeting about Dixon High athletics. Do not attend. Your child will not play sports.
There you
Because
go.
literally 2 weeks ago, a week ago or 2 weeks ago on a Wednesday night, Principal Marquez does these wonderful meetings. It's a fantastic opportunity to ask questions. The same 5 or 6 of us every single week. It was at 6 o'clock. Yes. Okay, we got off at 7 o'clock. They had the athletics meeting, and there were 5 screens of 30 people on a screen. It's sad.
Well, school board meetings, are lightly attended unless there's a controversial topic. So,
Like sports.
well, or COVID.
Yeah.
There
Oh,
has
goodness.
to be some type of athletic ball, baseball, football, soccer ball to get people to interested parents.
Yep. Agreed.
All right.
Sorry, it's late. I know everybody's tired.
Let's work on that, and I'll adjourn the meeting unless there's any objection. So big thanks to you, Lee, for your outstanding efforts in keeping the committee informed. Appreciate it. Michael, thank you for joining. I look forward to working with you. Monique,
Nice to
appreciate
meet you,
you
Michael.
spending
Thank
your
you.
time. All right.
Thanks, Monique, for hanging out.
Yeah, we
Thank
are
you.
adjourned. Good night, everyone.
Thank you.